Welcome to JVC English Learning Academy. Today, we begin a long and gentle journey. This is a story, but it is also a listening practice. So relax. Breathe slowly. Let your ears open. Let the words come to you like a calm river. Our story begins with a feeling many people know, but few people talk about clearly. It is the feeling of standing in a new place and suddenly realizing that everything feels different. Not bad, not good, just different. Imagine this. You arrive in a new country. Maybe it is your first day. Maybe the sky looks the same, but the air feels strange. People walk in a different rhythm. They stand closer or farther away. They speak louder or softer. They smile at different moments. You hear English all around you, but it does not sound like the English you learned from books. You understand the words, but you feel unsure. Something feels off, and you do not know why. This is where our story starts. Many learners think advanced English is about big words or fast speaking. But real advanced English begins here, in this quiet moment of confusion. This is the hook. This is the question. Why do I feel uncomfortable when I understand the language, but not the people? At first, you may think the problem is your English. You may tell yourself, I am not fluent enough. But slowly, another idea appears. What if the problem is not the language, but the culture inside the language? Culture is not only food, clothes, or holidays. Culture lives inside silence, inside jokes, inside how long people look into your eyes, inside how directly they say no. You may remember a small moment. Someone says, we should meet sometime. You smile and say yes. You wait. They never call. You feel confused. Did they lie? Were they rude? Or did the words mean something else? This is the challenge. Words are the same, but meanings change across cultures. In this story, you are not just a learner. You are a traveler of meaning. You begin to explore. You watch people carefully. You listen not only to words, but to tone, pauses, and emotions. You notice that in some cultures, people speak directly. In others, they speak softly and expect you to understand what is not said. You notice that silence can mean respect or discomfort or disagreement. Slowly, something changes inside you. You stop judging. You stop saying, this is wrong. Instead, you ask, what does this mean here? This is the realization. Cultural differences are not problems to fix. They are messages to decode. As you accept this, your English changes. Your listening becomes deeper. You hear feelings, not just sentences. You speak more calmly. You choose your words with care. You are no longer only translating language. You are translating human behavior. This is the transformation. And now you reflect. You think about your past misunderstandings. You feel kinder to yourself. You understand that confusion is not failure. It is progress. And here is the takeaway. Advanced English listening is not about speed. It is about awareness. When you understand cultural differences, English stops being a test. It becomes a bridge. And this is only the beginning of our journey. As time passes, you begin to notice something strange. No one tells you the rules, but everyone seems to follow them. These rules are invisible. They are not written in books. They are not taught in language class. But they guide how people speak, listen, agree, disagree, and even how they feel. This is where cultural differences become very quiet, but very powerful. Imagine you are in a meeting. People are talking in English. You understand every sentence. The grammar is clear. The words are familiar. But still, you feel lost. Someone makes a joke. Everyone laughs. You smile, but you do not laugh. You did not feel the joke. You wonder, why was that funny? Another person shares an idea. No one says, that's bad. They say, that's interesting. Later, the idea disappears. You feel confused again. In your culture, interesting is positive. Here, it may mean polite disagreement. This is the challenge. English is polite, but politeness changes shape in different cultures. You start to explore these invisible rules slowly, like a child learning how to walk. You listen more than you speak. You notice how people disagree without saying no. You notice how they give feedback gently, sometimes too gently. You hear phrases like maybe, perhaps, and I'm not sure. These words feel soft, but sometimes they are strong. You realize that in some cultures, being direct is honest. In others, being indirect is kind. Neither is better. They are just different ways of protecting relationships. One day, something small happens. Someone asks you, how are you? You start to answer honestly. You talk about your day, your stress, your tired mind. The other person listens for a moment, then looks uncomfortable. They wanted a short answer. Good, thanks. And you? This moment stays with you. You feel a little embarrassed. But then you understand. This question is not always a real question. Sometimes it is a greeting, not an invitation. This is the realization. Language carries habits, not just meaning. When you understand this, something inside you relaxes. You stop feeling angry or hurt so easily. You stop thinking people are cold or fake. You begin to see the system behind the behavior. This changes how you speak. You begin to match the rhythm around you. You pause when others pause. You keep answers short when short answers are expected. You share more when the space feels safe. This is the transformation. You are not losing yourself. You are learning flexibility. You reflect on this change. You see that true fluency is not sounding like a native speaker. It is feeling comfortable inside uncertainty. And here is the takeaway. Cultural understanding turns confusion into curiosity. When you stop fighting invisible rules, you begin to move with them. And your English becomes smoother, calmer, and more alive. At some point in your journey, misunderstanding stops being a surprise. It becomes a regular visitor. At first, you fear it. You think misunderstanding means failure. You think it means your English is not good enough. But slowly, something changes. You begin to see misunderstanding as a teacher. This section of the story begins with a moment that feels uncomfortable, maybe even painful. Imagine you say something in English that feels normal to you. You say it clearly. You are confident. But suddenly, the room feels quiet. Faces change. Someone looks away. Someone clears their throat. You feel the air shift. You did not mean to offend anyone, but somehow you did. Later, you replay the moment in your mind again and again. You ask yourself, what did I say wrong? This is the challenge. Cultural meaning does not live only in words. It lives in timing, tone, and shared history. You start to explore these moments more deeply. Instead of avoiding them, you study them. You ask gentle questions. You listen to explanations without defending yourself. You notice patterns. Maybe direct opinions sound rude in one place, but strong and confident in another. Maybe joking about personal topics feels friendly in one culture, but too private in another. You begin to understand that misunderstanding is not about intelligence. It is about difference. One day, a small realization arrives quietly. You notice that native speakers misunderstand each other too, especially when they come from different backgrounds. You hear them say, "Oh, that's not what I meant," or "Sorry, I misunderstood you." This moment is important. It shows you that misunderstanding is human, not foreign. This is the realization. You are not broken. Communication is simply imperfect. As this idea settles inside you, your fear begins to fade. You speak more freely, but also more carefully. You choose kindness over speed. You ask for clarification. You say things like, "Can you explain what you mean?" or "Let me make sure I understand." Your English grows stronger, not because it is perfect, but because it is flexible. This is the transformation. You are no longer trying to win conversations. You are trying to understand them. When you reflect on this stage, you feel proud. You see how far you have come. You remember a time when misunderstanding made you want to be silent. Now it makes you curious. And here is the takeaway. Advanced listening is not about catching every word. It is about staying open when meaning is unclear. When you welcome misunderstanding, English becomes a shared journey, not a lonely test. Have you ever noticed how some people speak and the room becomes quiet, not because they are loud, not because they are strong, but because their words feel alive? And today I want to start with a simple moment, a moment that looks small, but changes everything. Imagine this. You are sitting in a room, maybe a classroom, maybe an office, maybe just with friends, and someone stands up to speak. Their voice is calm, not fast, not nervous, and when they talk, people listen, not because they must, but because they want to, and you feel something inside you. A small question. You think, how do they do that? How can words feel so powerful, so natural, so real? And maybe you also feel something else, a quiet wish. You wish that one day, when you speak English, people will listen to you like that too. Not because your grammar is perfect, not because your accent is gone, but because your words connect. And this story begins there, with that quiet wish, because persuasive speaking is not about tricks. It is not about forcing people. It is about connection. And before we talk about skill, before we talk about technique, we need to understand something deeper. Persuasion starts when you understand yourself and other people, and I want you to relax. Take a slow breath and listen, because this story is not rushed, and you don't need to understand every word. You just need to feel the flow, like listening to music. Now let me take you back to a time when words were not powerful at all, when speaking felt heavy and difficult. I remember a young learner, maybe like you, who loved ideas but hated speaking. Every time this learner opened their mouth, English felt like a wall. The words were inside the head, but they did not come out smoothly. And when they tried to explain something, people looked confused, not because the idea was bad, but because the words were not clear. And slowly, quietly, confidence started to disappear. This learner began to believe a dangerous thought. Maybe I am not good at speaking, and that thought stayed there for a long time, growing stronger. And here is the challenge. Many English learners think persuasive speaking is for confident people only, for leaders, for native speakers, for people with talent. But that belief is wrong, and this is where our exploration begins. Persuasive speaking is not born, it is built, slowly, gently, with understanding. And the first thing we must explore is this. People do not listen to perfect English. They listen to clear feelings. When you speak, people are not counting your mistakes. They're asking one simple question inside their heart. Do I feel something? And if the answer is yes, they stay with you. If the answer is no, they leave. Even if your grammar is perfect, and this is why today's lesson is not about complex words, it is about simple words used with purpose. Think about a child telling a story. The words are easy, but the feeling is strong, and that is persuasion, not pushing, not proving, but inviting, and as we move deeper into this story, you will start to see persuasive speaking as a journey, not a performance, a journey where you walk with your listener, step by step, never rushing, never dragging, always aware. Now let me share a small turning point. One day, that same learner had to speak again, maybe in a meeting, maybe in class, and something changed. Not the English level, not the vocabulary, but the intention. Instead of thinking, I must sound smart, the learner thought, I want them to understand me. And so the learner slowed down, used shorter sentences, paused, and spoke like talking to a friend. And something surprising happened. People nodded, people smiled, someone asked a question, and in that moment, realization arrived. Persuasive speaking is not about impressing, it is about clarity and care. And this realization begins the transformation, because once you feel that connection, you want more of it. You start listening to how others speak. You notice rhythm. You notice pauses. You notice how stories pull you in, and you begin to copy, not the words, but the feeling. And this is how storytellers are born, not from rules, but from listening deeply. And now, let us reflect for a moment. Think about your own experience. Have you ever listened to someone speak simple English, but you felt inspired, calm, or motivated? That is persuasion, and you already understand it as a listener. Now we will slowly help you use it as a speaker, and here is your takeaway for this first section. Persuasive speaking begins when you stop trying to sound perfect and start trying to be understood. When you speak English like a human, not like a test, your words gain power. And in the next section, we will go deeper. We will explore the hidden structure behind persuasive speech, not a hard structure, but a natural one, the kind that feels like a story, the kind your brain loves to follow. So stay with me, slow down, and remember, your voice already matters. We are just learning how to let it breathe. When people hear the word structure, they often feel nervous. They imagine rules, boxes, and pressure. But today I want to show you a different picture, a soft picture. Imagine you are walking on a path in a quiet park. The path is not forcing you. It is just guiding you, and persuasive speaking works the same way. The human brain loves stories because stories feel safe, familiar, and easy to follow, and even when we don't notice it, we are always listening for a shape, a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And this section is about discovering that shape, not as a formula to memorize, but as a natural rhythm you already know. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched a movie and felt bored after 10 minutes, even though the acting was good? Often this happens because the story has no direction. Nothing is pulling you forward. And now think about a movie that kept you awake late at night. You wanted to sleep, but you thought, just 5 more minutes. That is the power of story. Flow, and persuasive speaking uses the same power, not to control people, but to keep them emotionally present. And this is very important for English learners, because when people are emotionally present, they are patient, they listen, they forgive small mistakes, and they want to understand you. And now let us enter the context of our story. Imagine again our learner, the one who discovered that clarity is more important than perfection. This learner now wants to speak persuasively, but feels lost, thinking, what should I say first? How do I continue? How do I end? And here comes the challenge. Without a clear inner map, speaking becomes stressful, ideas jump around, the listener feels tired, and the speaker feels frustrated. And many learners stop trying at this stage, but instead of stopping, our learner decides to explore, not advanced speaking books, not difficult theories, but simple human conversations, listening carefully to how people explain things naturally. And slowly, a pattern appears. When people speak well, they usually start by opening a small door. They say something that makes the listener curious, something relatable, something human. This is the hook, not a trick, just a gentle invitation. Then they give context. They help the listener understand why this topic matters, who it is for, and what problem exists. And when the listener feels safe and interested, the speaker introduces a challenge, a question, a conflict, something that creates movement. And this is where listening becomes active, because the brain wants resolution. And then comes exploration, where the speaker walks through thoughts, experiences, or examples, slowly, clearly, not rushing, allowing the listener to walk beside them. And then, almost quietly, comes realization, a moment where things become clear, not dramatic, but honest. And after that, transformation, a shift in thinking, feeling, or action. And finally, reflection and takeaway, where the speaker gently says, "This is what we learned. This is what you can carry with you." And when our learner sees this shape, something changes. Speaking feels lighter, not because it is shorter, but because it has direction. And this realization becomes a turning point. The learner stops memorizing sentences and starts telling journeys. And this is important for you too, because persuasive speaking at AC1 level is not about sounding advanced. It is about guiding attention. Now let us slow down and feel the structure. Imagine you want to persuade someone that learning English is worth their time. You don't start with reasons and benefits. You start with a moment. Maybe you say, "I remember the first time I understood a movie without subtitles," and immediately the listener enters your world. They feel something. Then you explain why that moment mattered. Maybe it gave freedom, confidence, connection. Then you mention the challenge, the fear, the mistakes, the tired days, and now the listener is emotionally with you. Then you explore how you continued, step by step. Then you realize that progress is quiet but real, and then you transform. You become someone who trusts the process, and at the end, you reflect and say, "If you keep going, this moment will come for you too." And notice something important. The English can be simple, but the impact is strong, because the structure carries the meaning. The English can be simple, but the impact is strong, because the structure carries the meaning. And this is why persuasive speakers often sound calm. They are not searching for words. They are walking a path they already see. And now comes an important reflection. Many learners believe they must speak fast to sound fluent, but persuasive speaking is often slower, because it respects the listener's mind. Pauses are not weakness. Pauses are kindness. They give space for understanding. And when you follow a story's shape, pauses appear naturally. And this brings us to the transformation in our learner. Once they start using story flow, their confidence grows. Not suddenly, but steadily. They feel less afraid of forgetting words, because they know where they are going. And when they make a mistake, they don't panic. They continue the journey, and listeners stay with them. And now I want you to reflect on yourself. When you speak English, do you try to say everything at once? Do you feel lost in the middle? If yes, that is not a language problem. That is a structure problem, and structure is something you can learn gently. And here is your takeaway for this section. Persuasive speaking follows a story shape your brain already loves. When you guide your listener through curiosity, challenge, and clarity, your words feel natural and strong, and in the next section, we will go even deeper. We will talk about emotion, not big emotion, but quiet emotion, the kind that makes people trust you. So stay with me, keep listening, and let the story continue. Now let me ask you something gently. When you listen to someone speak, what makes you trust them? Is it big words, fast talking, or perfect grammar, or is it something quieter, something softer, something you feel before you understand? Most people don't realize this, but trust is emotional, not logical, and persuasive speaking lives in that emotional space, not drama, not acting, just honesty, and this section is about learning how to speak to the heart, not just the ear. Because the ear hears words, but the heart decides whether to stay. And let us return again to our learner, the one who found structure and began to feel calmer while speaking. Now this learner faces a new challenge. Even with structure, sometimes people listen, but they don't feel moved. They understand the message, but nothing changes, and this can feel confusing because the speaker thinks, I explained everything clearly. Why didn't it work? And here comes an important realization. Persuasion is not only about being understood, it is about being felt, and this is where many speakers, even advanced ones, struggle. They speak from the head, not from the human experience, and so the listener understands, but does not care deeply. And this is where our exploration begins. Emotion in persuasive speaking does not mean crying, shouting, or strong drama. Emotion can be very quiet, like a soft memory, a small fear, a simple hope. Think about the last time someone told you a personal story, maybe something small, like feeling lost on the first day of a job or being afraid to speak in class. You probably felt close to them, even if the story was simple. That closeness is emotion, and emotion creates trust, and trust opens the door to persuasion. Now let us slow down and look closely at how this works in English speaking practice. Many learners think emotion needs complex language, but the opposite is true. Emotion lives in simple sentences. I was scared. I didn't know what to say. I felt proud. I almost gave up. These sentences are easy, but they carry weight, and when you use them honestly, your listener feels you, not your level, and our learner starts to understand this after one small moment. One day, while explaining an idea, instead of saying, "This method is effective and beneficial," the learner says, "This helped me when I felt lost," and suddenly, the room feels different, people lean in, someone nods, and this small change becomes a big turning point. The realization is clear. People connect with experiences, not explanations, and this realization slowly transforms the way the learner speaks. They stop hiding behind neutral words and start sharing small pieces of their journey, not everything, just enough to be human. And now, let us reflect together. When you speak English, do you protect yourself by staying neutral, by sounding formal, by avoiding personal words? This is very common, especially for learners, because mistakes feel dangerous, but persuasive speaking asks for gentle courage, not perfection, just honesty. And here is something important to understand. You do not need a dramatic life to be persuasive. Everyday experiences are enough. Feeling nervous before a test, feeling happy when someone understands you, feeling tired but continuing. These are human moments, and humans listen to humans, and as our learner practices this, something interesting happens. Their pronunciation improves naturally. Not because they practice sounds, but because they care about being understood emotionally. Their voice becomes warmer, slower, more alive, and listeners respond with patience and interest. And this is the transformation. Persuasive speaking changes not only how others see you, but how you hear yourself. You stop sounding like a student and start sounding like a person with a voice, and now comes reflection. Emotion does not mean sharing everything. It means choosing one feeling and letting it breathe. You don't need many stories. Just one honest moment is enough to open the heart of the listener, and here is your takeaway for this section. Persuasive speaking grows when you allow simple emotion into your English. When you speak from experience, not explanation, your words become real. And in the next section, we will explore something very powerful: silence, pauses, and rhythm, the music inside persuasive speaking. So stay with me, slow down, and keep listening, because your voice is learning how to sing. Now let us listen closely, not to words, but to the space around them, because persuasive speaking is not only about what you say, it is also about how you let your words arrive, like footsteps on a quiet street. Some speakers talk nonstop, filling every second with sound, but the most persuasive speakers understand silence. They understand rhythm, and this section is about the music between the words, the pauses, the speed, the calm, and once again, our learner reaches a new stage. They now have structure. They now use emotion, but something still feels missing. Sometimes people interrupt. Sometimes attention drifts, and the learner wonders, why does this happen even when my message is clear? And here comes the challenge. Attention is fragile, especially in a world full of noise, and persuasive speaking must protect attention gently, not by being louder, but by being more intentional. And this is where exploration begins. The learner starts listening to great speakers, not for vocabulary, but for rhythm. They notice something surprising. Great speakers do not speak fast all the time. They change speed. They pause before important ideas. They slow down when something matters. And these pauses are not empty. They are full of meaning. And for English learners, pauses are especially powerful because they give time to think, time to breathe, time for the listener to catch up, and our learner decides to try something simple. After each important sentence, they pause for 1 second, just one, and at first, it feels uncomfortable, like something is missing, but then something changes. People stop interrupting, eyes stay focused, and the learner feels more in control, and this leads to a realization. Silence is not weakness. Silence is confidence. When you pause, you show that you trust your words to land, and this realization creates transformation. The learner no longer rushes to prove something. They speak with calm, with space, and now let us reflect on speed. Many learners believe fast English sounds fluent, but fast English often sounds nervous. Persuasive speaking often sounds slower than you expect, because it respects understanding, and when you slow down, your pronunciation becomes clearer. Your grammar becomes more accurate, and your listener feels safe. And now comes another important element: stress. Not emotional stress, but word stress. Which words you make stronger. Persuasive speakers highlight meaning, not every word, and you can do this simply by slightly raising your voice on important words and lowering it on others. And this does not require perfect pronunciation. It requires intention. And our learner practices this by asking one question before speaking. What is the one idea I want them to remember? And that idea gets the strongest stress and the longest pause, and everything else becomes support. And slowly, speaking starts to feel like music, not noise, and listeners feel guided, not pushed. And now the transformation becomes visible. The learner feels calmer before speaking. their body relaxes, their voice becomes steadier, and this calm spreads to the listener, creating trust and now reflection. Silence gives meaning to words. Just like space gives meaning to music without pauses, everything sounds the same, and here is your takeaway for this section. Persuasive speaking uses rhythm, pauses, and calm to protect attention. When you slow down and respect silence, your words gain weight. And in the next section, we will explore the final deep skill of persuasive speaking, guiding others without forcing them. So stay with me, breathe, and let the rhythm carry you forward. Now we arrive at something very important, something that many people misunderstand about persuasion. Persuasion is not control. It is not pressure. It is not winning. True persuasive speaking feels like guidance, not force, like holding a light, not pulling a rope. And in this section, we will explore how great speakers invite people to move, think, or change without making them feel small or wrong. And once again, our learner stands at a new edge. They can speak clearly, emotionally, with rhythm, but now they face a quiet fear. What if people disagree? What if they say no? What if my idea is not accepted? And this fear makes many speakers push too hard, explain too much, or defend too fast. And here comes the challenge. When people feel pushed, they push back, even if your idea is good. And so our exploration begins with a simple truth. People like to feel respected, and persuasive speaking respects freedom. It does not take it away, and our learner notices that the most. Persuasive speakers do not say, "You must think this way." They say, "This is what I discovered. This is how it helped me, and you can decide what it means for you." And this gentle language opens doors, not walls, and the learner begins to practice this shift. Instead of giving orders, they share possibilities. Instead of arguing, they ask questions, and something beautiful happens. Listeners relax, conversation flows, and persuasion becomes cooperation, not conflict. And here comes a powerful realization. People are more likely to follow an idea when they feel it is their choice, and this realization transforms the learner's mindset. They stop trying to win and start trying to connect. And now let us reflect on English learning itself. When someone tells you, "You must study harder," you probably feel tired. But when someone says, "I was stuck too, and this helped me," you feel curious. That curiosity is the doorway to persuasion, and curiosity grows from stories, from examples, from shared humanity. And our learner starts ending their talks not with strong conclusions, but with open reflections, gentle questions, small invitations, and listeners respond by thinking, by asking, by engaging, and this is the transformation. Speaking becomes a shared journey, not a performance, and confidence grows quietly, not from applause, but from connection. And now reflection. Guiding without pushing means trusting the listener's intelligence, trusting their experience, and trusting the process. And here is your takeaway for this section. Persuasive speaking invites. It does not demand. When you guide with respect and openness, people walk with you willingly. And now, we move to our final section, where everything comes together: voice, emotion, rhythm, and purpose. So stay with me, because the story is about to complete its circle. Now we arrive at the final part of our journey, not an ending, but a new beginning, because persuasive speaking is not a skill you finish, it is a voice you grow into. And in this last section, everything comes together: structure, emotion, rhythm, respect, and purpose. And our learner now stands in a different place than before, not perfect, not fearless, but grounded. And this is important. because persuasive speakers are not people without fear. They are people who speak with fear and still choose clarity, and now the context shifts. The learner is asked to speak again, maybe to share an idea, maybe to explain a vision, maybe just to express a thought in English, and this time, something feels different inside. There is no rush, no tight pressure in the chest. The learner knows where to start. They begin with a small human moment, something real, something simple, and the listener leans in. Then they gently guide the story forward, letting pauses breathe, letting emotion stay soft and honest. And when disagreement appears, they do not fight it, they welcome it, they listen, and they respond with respect, and something powerful happens. People remember the message, not because it was perfect, but because it felt true. And here comes the final realization. Persuasive speaking is not about changing others. It is about expressing yourself so clearly and kindly that change becomes possible. And this realization completes the transformation. The learner no longer asks, "Am I good enough to speak?" They ask, "How can I make this easier to understand?" And that question changes everything, because it shifts focus away from fear and towards service. And now let us reflect together. Think about the speakers you remember from your life, teachers, friends, leaders, storytellers. They were not all fluent, they were not all loud, but they were present, and presence is the true heart of persuasive speaking. Presence means you are here, with your listener, in this moment, and English becomes a bridge, not a barrier. And now comes the final takeaway of this entire journey. Persuasive speaking at AC1 level is not about advanced words. It is about advanced awareness. Awareness of your listener, awareness of your message, awareness of your rhythm, and awareness of your humanity. And when you speak with that awareness, your English grows naturally, your confidence grows quietly, and your voice becomes something people trust. And as we close this story, I want you to remember this. You do not need to become someone else to be persuasive. You only need to become clearer, calmer, and kinder with your words. And that journey starts every time you speak. One sentence, one pause, one honest moment at a time. And if you keep practicing, keep listening, and keep telling your story slowly, your voice will not only be heard, it will be remembered. And this is the true power of persuasive speaking. As your journey continues, something deeper begins to happen. At first, learning English felt like learning a tool. Then it felt like learning a system of rules. Now it begins to feel more personal. You notice that when you speak English, you are not exactly the same person you are in your own language. Your voice sounds different. Your personality feels slightly changed. This realization can feel strange. You may ask yourself, which one is the real me? This is where culture and identity meet. Imagine you are telling a story in English. In your language, you would use strong emotion. You would speak loudly, with passion. But in English, especially in some cultures, you feel the need to be calmer, more controlled. You pause more. You smile differently. You may feel like you are hiding a part of yourself. This is the challenge. You fear that adapting means losing who you are. You begin to explore this feeling carefully. You watch others who live between cultures. You notice how they move easily from one style to another. They are not fake. They are flexible. They laugh differently. They disagree differently. But their values stay the same. Slowly, a new understanding forms. Language is not a mask. It is a lens. Each language shows a different side of you. This is the realization. You are not becoming less yourself. You are becoming more complete. As this idea grows stronger, your English voice changes. You stop copying others. You start expressing yourself in a way that feels honest, but respectful of the culture around you. You choose words that fit your heart and the situation. This is the transformation. You feel more confident, not because you sound perfect, but because you sound real. You reflect on this stage with calm pride. You see that cultural understanding has given you freedom. You are no longer trapped between cultures. You are building a bridge between them. And here is the takeaway. True fluency is not imitation. It is integration. When you accept your place between cultures, your English becomes a living part of who you are. Now you arrive at a quiet place in your journey. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. But it is deep. You may not notice it at first, but something inside you has changed. You are still learning English. You still make mistakes. You still meet moments of confusion. But they no longer shake you the way they used to. Imagine yourself in a real conversation now. You are listening to someone speak English. You hear their words, but you also hear their intention. You notice how fast they speak, how they pause, how their voice rises or falls. You understand when they are being polite, when they are being careful, and when they are being honest. You feel less pressure to reply quickly. You give yourself time. This is the result of everything you have learned. Earlier, English felt like a performance. Now, it feels like a connection. This is the challenge of the final stage. You must trust yourself. You must accept that understanding culture is a lifelong process. There is no final test. No perfect moment. You continue to explore with humility. You stay open. You ask questions with respect. You listen with your whole attention. One day, you notice something small. You feel gratitude. You remember the confusion, the invisible rules, the misunderstandings, and the questions about identity. They were not obstacles. And this story is now part of your English voice.